again, everyone. Welcome to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion Podcast. This is Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower. I'm joined again today by my good friend and colleague, Beck Barnes. You know, as we sit here, it's just past mid-May, which is a traditional point where cotton planters in the Mid-South, the Southeast, Southwest, the Western states, South and Central Texas have started or are getting started. From what we're hearing, growers pretty much everywhere, including parts of the Texas High Plains, Oklahoma, and Kansas, are already in the field. Now, good planting moisture and good temperatures appear to be moving this crop in at least a week to a week and a half early. Although, as we understand it, some recent heavy rains have also bogged down planting in parts of South Georgia and Central Texas. So, Beck, it looks like we're off to a pretty good start.
That's right. Yeah. And, not all those rains are bogged down rains. Some of those rains are quite welcome in parts of the belt, Jim. And, I have taken some flack here on this podcast and elsewhere for my weekend fun activity of watching the Lubbock Airport rain gauge online. But I did note, again, what an exciting life I lead. But I did note that I think that gauge at the Lubbock Airport showed they got about a little over an inch and a half right there at the Lubbock Airport just last week. And so we know that I think midweek last week on like the 16th or somewhere in there,
right?
Good rain right there. And granted, that's one rain gauge in one little spot. And we'll hear in our interview with Ed Barnes a little later that, he understands that the rain out there was a little spottier. It's not like these fronts we get here in the Mid-South where it's giant, covers the whole states of Tennessee and Mississippi together. A little spottier than that most of the time out there, but man, some rain is good rain out there. And so we're happy after the 2 years that our friends in the Southwest have endured. We honestly, being sincere, I'm happy to hear about any type of rains they get out there. So to your point,
it's interesting. It's interesting, but Terry Siders with Texas A&M AgriLife, it's one of the contributing folks for our crop scan report. And his most recent report is he sent in to me the other day, goes, "It's raining. It's finally rained." Exclamation points. And Ken Leger, our good friend out there, who's the new extension cotton specialist out in that High Plains area, issues a weekly report. And he's giving everybody a green flag. It's just like, go. So off they go.
Love to hear it.
And I'm happy to hear it too. Definitely. Well, in addition to some of these favorable planting conditions, another key aspect behind the quick start to this planting season is obviously some new and improved planting technologies. Now, we've known for years that cotton growers have generally been quick to adapt new technologies, especially when it comes to saving time and labor. A lot of that information has come from a Cotton Incorporated study conducted back in 2015. And obviously, some new precision ag options have come to market here in the past 8 years. It's one of the reasons Cotton Incorporated went back to growers last year to update that study. And joining us here in just a few minutes is our good friend, Dr. Ed Barnes, who is Senior Director of Agricultural and Environmental Research for Cotton Incorporated, to discuss some of the key findings from that new survey. Those results are pretty exciting. We certainly hope you'll stick around for that discussion.
Yeah, we certainly do. But first, our sponsoring partner, the American Cotton Shippers Association, has a brief message that they'd like to share.
The American Cotton Shippers Association, also known as ACSA, is a trade association primarily made up of cotton merchants founded in 1924. ACSA members manage the majority of the world's cotton trade, providing services of merchandising, delivery logistics, and risk management to their customers. ACSA is proud to be celebrating its 100th anniversary this year. Join them in Scottsdale, Arizona in June 2024 for their centennial celebration event.
All right. Well, as always, we want to say thank you to our good friends at ACSA for that message and for their support. Okay, Jim, I'm going to stay in your lane here by delivering this week's crop progress report. I hope you will forgive me.
Go for it, man.
All right. So we briefly mentioned the progress being made with this year's crop earlier in our intro, but to put some real numbers behind those comments that Jim made, let's take a look at the most current USDA crop progress numbers for the week that ended May 19. That's 2 days ago as we record here. So this week's report shows that 44% of this year's crop is now in the ground. That's right at the 5-year average for mid-May, and it's an 11-point jump just in the past week. So we know you guys are out there hot and heavy. Now, brisk planting is now reported in all cotton-producing states, with regional averages totaling 53% for the Southeast, 65% for the Mid-South, 32% for the Southwest, and a whopping 95% for the far west out there in Arizona and California. So that tracks, Jim. I know that my farming buddies down there in the Mississippi Delta have been having that itchy trigger finger. So yeah, 65% here in the Mid-South, yeah, tracks right on top with the impatient buddies of mine that I know.
Yeah, I've again, leaning back to our crop scan report for this week, Tucker Miller, who's our contributing consultant down in Mississippi, says, you know, as far as the groups and farmers that he works with, they're done. Cotton planting is finished.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's up and looking good. So, you know, we're off to a great start. And now it's our pleasure to welcome back to the Cotton Companion our good friend, Dr. Ed Barnes. He's Senior Director of Agricultural and Environmental Research for Cotton Incorporated. Ed, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing? What's your quick impression about the planting season to date?
Hey, Jim and Beck, it's great to be with you. You know, from what I've heard, planting is going pretty well. We definitely had some challenges in the Houston area, obviously, last week. But I think, you know, things are shaping up pretty good. I hope it keeps raining out in West Texas. But I think we're off to a good start from what I know.
Sounds good. Well, as you know, we have quoted statistics from Cotton Incorporated's 2015 Precision and Agricultural Technology Adoption Survey here for about 8 years. In fact, we might have worn some of those statistics out.
We did.
So what made you think it was time to update your survey, and what kind of response did you get from growers?
Yeah, so there was, you know, really a lot of reasons to update the survey. And, you know, I got to give credit to our sustainability division. Dr. Jesse Daystar leads that division. Stephen Pierce is a director in that area. And then J-Ron is a data analyst. And so they did a lot of the heavy lifting on this survey. So I was just kind of an advisor and an interpreter for the results this time. But, you know, and really they had several different objectives. And one is to, what they need some of this data is they're going to update a life cycle assessment for U.S. cotton. And this is important, having the latest data, because growers are becoming more efficient all the time. And that is a reduction in their environmental footprint is what is the result of that. So we need to keep this data up to date so that is accurately portraying cotton. Another thing that a second objective is really to look at progress our growers are making on technology, and related to that, also ask them about, you know, what are the big concerns that they have. And that's really important for us in the Ag Research Division to make sure that you know, if there are any emerging issues, that we are working with universities and ARS to address those challenges.
How many growers responded to the survey this year?
Yeah, we had over 700 growers respond in one. So a big call out to them. This obviously wouldn't have been possible without their participation. And when we look at the acres they represented, cotton acres, it, you know, gave us a nice 10% representation of U.S. cotton acres. So it was a good sampling.
That is, yeah. We know as a brand who sometimes tries to survey our audience, 700 responses. That's great, man. Y'all did darn good work there. And I should say too, I was very excited to see y'all come back out and redo this ag survey, or rather tech adoption survey. What did y'all call it? What was the official name of this one?
This one is it's still called the Natural Resource Survey.
Okay, natural resource survey, but there is a section of it that is devoted to
Agricultural technology. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and precision and things. Yeah, so good and selfish reasons. I loved that y'all came back out and re-updated it because yeah, for 10 years now, you know, a little peek behind the curtain here, I sometimes approach ag tech brands and precision brands and try to get them to support various things that Cotton Grower, the magazine, is doing and for the cotton industry. And I say, yeah, look at this survey that Dr. Ed Barnes did. Look how many of our growers, our audience are using these technologies. And yeah, as the years went on, boy, I was quoting this decade-old survey and I started getting a lot of skeptical raised eyebrows. So it's very good that you guys updated this thing for good and selfish reasons for me. So I'm sure that results varied, you know, Ed, another thing we know from when we do surveys, results vary from state to state and region to region. In a lot of ways, it's 4 different countries in terms of the way cotton is produced out there in the Cotton Belt. So was there anything specific that you were hoping to find out with this year's update? And were there any surprises that came through in the results?
You know, definitely we know every region of the Cotton Belt is different. And so we did try to summarize this data by region and look at trends in the region. One of the things, you know, specific to ag tech, you know, when we look at something like AutoSteer, that has been just a huge success. Our latest numbers, we went from 69% in 2015 to 86% in this latest survey. So, you know, a majority of the growers are taking advantage of that technology. And then when we look at yield monitoring, in some ways, I want to say I was disappointed. It's only at 35%. It's increased from 20%. And, you know, I was questioning, you know, why is that growth so slow? And I started thinking about it. You know, AutoSteer is highly automated. You get in the tractor, maybe you have to drive around your field and do a boundary and run an A/B line, and then it takes over, right? There's not a lot of work involved after that. Whereas with a yield monitor, especially in the old days, and for a lot of people, they're still running some of the older machines. You know, you have to go download a data card, bring it into a computer, import the data. It's actually not a trivial, especially when you're farming across 5 counties, and you know that last field is 20 miles from your office. And so what was interesting to me was to look at the adoption rate on yield monitors kind of parallels by region the adoption rate of the new harvest system. So the new harvest system from John Deere, you know, one of the nice things is that the latest models all have a cellular modem on board. It has the ability to transmit that data in near real time up to the cloud on my John Deere. And it's really, you know, lowered the bar on being able to get a yield map and being able to start looking at it. So, you know, what we saw where you know, in the Mississippi Delta, the Mid-South has always lended itself to have larger flat fields. And that's really, they've been ahead of the curve in taking advantage of these new machines. And so we see that's where the yield monitor adoption is also the highest. And it kind of follows where people have adopted the new harvesters. That's where we've seen the increase in yield monitor use. So that's a positive. So I think we're going to see that continue to go up. And the other challenge that we're faced with is automating the use of that data, right? So now you still have to, a grower or his or her consultant still needs to look at that map and figure out how to turn that into an action. And whether that's, you know, identifying, and I think some of the easiest things to do is what part of the field is continuously non-productive and losing money. And if it's in a corner where I can take it out of production, and, you know, our sustainability divisions had this, you know, work with quails forever, turn that into quail habitat or CRP with NRCS. So it's generating a little bit of income, and it goes from a negative number to a positive number. You know, that's an easy application of yield maps. But to take it to the next level, I think we're going to need some data automation and data interpretation that I think the technology is really getting there to where that's something I think we can look forward to in the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's But that would have been a surprise to me too. I would have guessed if you had asked me before we started this interview, what percentage of our guys are using yield monitors? I'd have thought it was much higher than that. Yeah, because my understanding was it was part of the bells and whistles on the new pickers 10 years ago. And so I just would have assumed everybody was kind of picking that up. But yeah, you explained it very well there.
Well, and that does show, like, even, you know, if you think about it, before the module building pickers, whether that was Cases or John Deere's, everything had to be self-installed, and you had to go out there and cut holes in all your chutes and wire everything in yourself. And so it was really only about since 2008, 2009 that they've been factory installed. And it's only, you know, I'd say the last 5 years where the automated data transmission has really been worked out.
Yeah, more user friendly for sure here
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah.
So, Ed, the study focused on 6 primary technologies. That was handheld GPS, imagery, yield monitors, as we discussed, soil mapping, soil sampling, and auto steer, which we also discussed. But how much did use of these technologies change among the growers? And again, we talked about a couple of those, but how much did use of these others change among cotton growers since that 2015 survey?
Yeah, you know, everything made some form of increase, so that's a positive. And like I said, AutoSteer was the most highly adopted. The one that I was kind of surprised in that, and maybe this is going to change in the future, but imagery only went from 13 to 19%. And so I thought maybe that would have been more with kind of a lot more of the, you know, UAV, what do you call them, drone image systems out there. So I'm not, you know, I expected that number to grow a little more than it did. I think another thing that may influence this in the future is we're kind of going back to the past on satellite data. I think, and maybe part of the UAV imagery thing is, you know, it's, if you don't know what you're doing, it's still a lot of work to put that imagery together and turn it into a map. And now, one thing I wasn't paying close enough attention to is that probably on most people's farm, there's a public or, you know, a non-military satellite taking an image of their field every day. So there's a lot of private satellite data out there, and some of it is even available for free. The Sentinel satellites, that's 30-meter resolution, the 15-meter resolution, so not super high resolution, but a lot of that's available for free. And now that we have these repeat cycles that are almost every day, I think we need to go back and excuse the pun, look at satellite imagery again and think about what can we do with that. Because, you know, even 10 years ago, you know, even if it came over every week, the chances are in the Mid-South is going, or in the Southeast is going to be cloudy that day. And so maybe you get a useful image, you know, once every month or once every 2 months, which you couldn't depend on for production decisions. But if it's coming over every day, you're getting closer to where, you know, you're going to catch a day where it's not cloud covered.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. And Jim, probably something we should do a podcast episode on one day. But I wonder that at hunting season, I have my Moultrie Mobile Cam app. It's my game cam app that I look at, and I click on I was tooling around on it, clicked on a little GPS button on this app, and lo and behold, there's our fields that are around. There's a satellite image of the fields around the woods where we hunt, and it's like, I can tell that's the winter wheat from this season. Like this picture is from the past couple of months. You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, you go, wait a second, who took this picture? Where did these photos come from? Yeah, and I wonder how often our audience thinks about that too.
Yeah, and you know, another tool that growers may want to take a look at, and it used to be you had to download an app, a free app from Google, but Google Maps has something. You know, probably a lot of people use Google Maps, and they have something that's called Google Earth, and they now have that as a web interface. But it surprised me. I was going to Kansas to give a talk on data, and I just wanted to kind of look around the fields there and see how much variability was present. And I pulled up Google Earth, and they had this, at this time it was in January, they had a November image of Kansas at 50 centimeters for free.
Yeah.
So when you think 50 centimeters, now I was able to see tire tracks. I was able to see how many modules are in the field. So yeah, the satellite technology is one I remind myself it's not what it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, listening to this, were there any other areas of practices that growers would consider high priority for automation, or other areas that maybe you wish you had included in the survey that you just didn't have room for or time for?
Well, if you allow me, you bring up that word automation, and that was something we knew we added to this survey was, and we put it in terms of driverless tractors.
Right.
So that's the thing that's kind of coming sooner rather than later. I mean, it's here, right? So John Deere has a tractor prototype that's almost commercially available. CNH has a sprayer that's a driverless sprayer. So those technologies are not something that's 5 years. They're here today, and so we wanted to kind of get a sense of what producers thought about this technology, right now, and their top priorities on. We asked them what would be some of the first applications, and it was kind of maybe what you'd expect: planting, spraying, harvest, preseason weed control. And it's interesting for a lot of those, especially on the weed control, there's a lot of options coming now that are both, taking advanced technologies. Of course, we got the John Deere See and Spray, and I think we're going to see a lot of a couple other options that are similar on the See and Spray approach. And then, in Australia, that's been around for a while, is Swarm Farm, where they're actually using automated sprayers with See and Spray as a service to go out and do weed control in Australia. I could see that coming here. I'm surprised, to be honest, planting, I wasn't so sure that would make the list, but it did. And that's interesting in that the AGCO is one, you have John Deere, Case, and AGCO are the big three left. And AGCO has a division called Fendt, and they focused on autonomous planting and kind of a swarm approach. So that's interesting. We'll see how that all turns out. And then on the spray side, that did make me think we have on our board of directors at Cotton Incorporated, we kind of have an automation advisory group, just some of our board members that we can ask questions to and make sure, this area is evolving so quickly, and get the producer's perspective. And I think we started that more than 5 years ago. And one of the first things they said they identified they would like to do is spot spray with a UAV. And at the time, to be honest, I was a little skeptical. I'm like, really, that's what you're going to pick? and I know better than to question my board members too hard, though. And sure enough, what we've seen is these I'll use the term spray drones have really taken off, and we're still figuring out where they're going to be most useful. But it's really a surprise. It's kind of caught me by surprise. I just didn't think that one. I thought it was going to be practical, really useful from a research perspective, but at a commercial scale, I wasn't sure. One of my board members, they had I love, these guys are so creative. We're talking about, well, what I want is either an automated sprayer or a drone that goes with me and my big sprayer and does all the corners and the nooks and crannies while I'm spraying the majority of the fields, And so you can see kind of that as being a great solution.
It's amazing. I can only imagine, I think the survey showed that, growers were interested in driverless tractors, but I think there's still a little skepticism out there, or maybe just the fact that that's my tractor time. That's my seat time in the field. And I know what I'm doing, and I know how to do it right. And I'm not sure that I'm quite ready to turn it over to, a driverless system at this point. But yeah, that was very, very interesting. And you mentioned drones. That was my next question. was there any other application or any thought about adding drones into this survey just to see, or is it just kind of, by the time you started the survey, I think things just may have just kind of blown up a little bit.
Yeah, well, and you see, we have a lot of back and forth internally because we already, I think I would be surprised if a grower could have completed this survey in less than 30 minutes. So we were asking a lot of them already.
Yeah.
And so we really went back and forth on what questions to include and not include. And I was glad they allowed me to put in a few automation questions. But you're right. I think, looking at where things are headed, the next time we do this, a better focus on UAVs is a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think I went to a single field day last year that did not have some sort of drone demonstration attached to it. And
So far they seem to be working pretty well. I know we've had Cotton Incorporated has funded some studies with Simmer Burke at University of Georgia and Steve Lee this year at Auburn. And, they're showing those application patterns are getting good coverage. So that's encouraging.
Yeah. You went from 2015 to 2023 before updating this survey. What's your time frame for the next round?
That's a good question. I think part of it's going to be driven, I think, really how the next 5 years go.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we probably will end up doing it sooner rather than later. Mainly because if you think what the last 5 years have been like, we've had just, terrible droughts in Texas and the Southwest. We've had hurricanes in the Southeast. And so from a yield perspective, that really complicates the picture, right? And so I'm hoping we'll get some more normal conditions or, positive, maybe we're even due for some good conditions, not just normal. So that will kind of inform us better on what is our real trajectory when you take away some of these kind of, once in 100-year events that are kind of distorting things. And but I would, maybe in the next 5 years, I could see something being needed.
Yeah, well, we hope these are once every 100-year events. Yeah. But anyway, now for our listeners who want a bit more information about this survey, you and your colleagues at Cotton Incorporated graciously allowed Cotton Grower to publish your preliminary findings in our April issue. It's also online at cottongrower.com. What's the timing for having the full report ready for release?
So actually, I just read from our sustainability group, just shared the latest draft. And so I think it's going to be submitted first to a technical journal, kind of a peer reviewed journal. And they need that done because if we want to make claims based on these results, we're overseeing, what we say is kind of overseen by the USDA, and we have to have kind of peer reviewed research to back up our claims. So that is probably going to be submitted in the next 2 weeks, and then it'll probably be about a month before that gets reviewed and the changes are updated. But probably, to be honest, probably be about 2 months before the full report is released. But we'll kind of keep you advised on how that progresses.
Okay, sounds good. Ed, I know you're probably going to have a very busy summer, like the rest of us. It's always good that you can take time to join us for this discussion. The survey was certainly really good information. There's a lot of insight there that our listeners can certainly glean some information from. We appreciate your time, and I'm sure we will catch up with you probably sometime this summer somewhere.
Yeah. No, I was just looking at my calendar, and I'm a little depressed on how much travel I've agreed to in the next 2 months. So I'll probably run into you somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere our paths are going to cross. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Ed. We appreciate it.
All right. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you, Ed. So, all right, that's it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. We want to say thanks again to Dr. Ed Barnes. That's no relation now, if I haven't said it already. No relation. We don't have that type of brain power on my end of the Barnes long family tree. So, but we want to say thank you again to Dr. Ed Barnes from Cotton Incorporated for joining today's discussion. We want to say thanks also to the American Cotton Shippers Association for their continued participation and sponsorship with the Cotton Companion podcast. And as always, we want to say thank you, dear listeners, for joining us. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you did like what you've heard, please be sure to spread the word and tell your farming friends and neighbors about the Cotton Companion podcast, especially during this season of long hours inside the cab of the planter. Let us keep you company in that planter. So here's where and how they can find us.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
Cotton Companion podcast is produced twice monthly by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues at the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stedman. He's Beck Barnes, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks with the next episode of the Cotton Companion. Until then, keep those planters rolling and stay safe.
Yeah, it works anyway.